The Reynolds transport theorem tells us the conservation of a quantity F varying over a control volume which moves with a velocity b. The velocity b can be spatially varying. So the conservation law that we found out is that the derivative of the integral of F over the entire volume is comprised of two terms. The first term is the time derivative integrated over the entire volume, plus the second term, which is going to be integral F b dot n dA, where area swept by the volume because of the velocity accounts for the second term. So this particular conservation statement can be used to derive the conservation of mass. So let us choose the quantity F to be the density. So if we choose the quantity F to be the density, the term on the left hand side becomes ddt of integral rho dV over the entire volume, and this is tantamount to ddt of mass of the control volume. But now let us see how we can intuitively understand the conservation of mass. If we have a set collection of fluid particles in the control volume, these particles are moving with a velocity b at the moment, but if we have a flow, in the flow a given identified volume, so this identified volume is called as the control mass. So no particle leaves or enters into a control mass. No particle may leave or enter. So this means that if I have identified a control mass, the total mass of that control volume will remain constant. So when it moves in a flow, this control mass can deform, but the total mass of this control volume will remain constant. But the caveat is, now we are tracking the mass as it is moving with the velocity of the fluid. It is not having a random velocity b, not random but any other velocity b. So if we are tracking a control mass and the control mass is moving with the velocity of the fluid, b will in fact be the velocity of the fluid. Therefore on the left hand side we have ddt of mcv, on the right hand side we will have integral del f del t dv over the volume plus integral f u dot n dA. So the integral statement is this, and we know that the left hand side is the rate of change of mass of the control volume, but when the control volume moves with the velocity of the fluid, this particular term will be equal to 0. Hence the integral statement is integral del t of f, actually this should be rho, similarly this should be rho. Alright, so del rho del t dv plus integral rho u dot n dA is equal to 0. So this is the statement of the conservation of mass. Now if we want to use this particular equation, so this is over the area, this is over the volume. So using this conservation of mass statement would necessitate knowing the velocity of the fluid at the control volume surface or the control surface. So we must know the velocity over the entire area. Only then can we calculate this particular term. However, this particular information may or may not be known over the entire volume. So it is often more convenient to cast the above integral conservation equation for a generic control volume. And by a generic control volume, we mean something which does not conform with the fluid, with the control mass, and something which doesn't move with the velocity of the fluid. So in general, we can write ddt of integral rho dv over v star is equal to integral del rho del t dv over v star plus integral rho b dot n dA over a star, where v star a star is a control volume which moves with a velocity b. It's just to distinguish between the control volume which moves with the velocity of the fluid, and I have not put stars over here. Okay, so this particular control volume moves with the velocity of the fluid. Now here comes the important part. Let me in fact write down the statement of the conservation of mass as seen from a control volume which moves with the velocity of the fluid. Now if we recall the fundamental meaning of these two terms, this particular term is when we have a volume and the quantity itself is changing inside the volume. The limits are fixed, that is, the limits are fixed. This particular term is the change in quantity F because this particular volume can sweep a certain excess volume. This particular volume is gained, this particular volume is lost. So the physical meaning of this term is it is the volume swept. Now I can choose V star and V to coincide. So at that particular time, this particular term and this particular term are identical. So if I call this 1 and I call this 2, so 1 and 2 are identical. Meaning I have chosen V and V star to be identical, to be coincidental, and I am choosing the same timestamp. That is at the time, at the given time, del rho del t inside that chosen volume. So basically V and V star are now both the same. I'm drawing it slightly offset just to show that there are two control volumes. But at inside all the points in the volume, del rho del t is identically changing. Therefore, integrals 1 and 2 are identical. What is not identical is this particular term, because there is no analog of this term in this equation, and the flux is obviously not equal because the volume V may move a different distance than volume V star, because the velocity of the volume V star is B while the velocity of the volume V is U, and in general B and U are not identical. So now if we choose, we are free to choose this condition. So if we choose that, we can write, so if they are equal, I can write from this particular equation d dt of integral rho dv over the generic control volume V star is equal to, now this particular term is minus of this particular term, because del rho del t dv integrated over the volume is equal to minus rho u dot n cap dA. So this particular term with a negative sign goes over here, minus integral rho u dot n dA plus integral rho b dot n dA. So now this is the generic conservation of, so this statement is the generic statement for the conservation of mass. Okay, so this particular volume was A star, this particular volume was A. All right. So when we make the two control volumes coincide as delta t goes to 0, the flux attempted to cut by these two terms will be different, but the areas will also coincide. The areas coincide, but the at that given point, the one of the volumes is trying to cut a flux in this direction, one of the volumes is trying to cut a flux in this direction, and because the areas have coincided, I can very well write this. I can write A as A star. Therefore, this becomes integral rho b minus u dot n dA. So now the question is, okay, let us see, let us verify what we know already. So when b is equal to u, when b equal to u, the conservation of mass statement simply simplifies to integral rho dv over v is 0, where now the control mass is moving with the velocity u, the control volume is moving with the velocity u, and this left hand side by very definition is integral of del t of rho dv plus integral rho, but now b is equal to u, so this will be u dot n dA, and we get back the original equation, that is this particular equation. Okay, so when b is equal to u, we get back our original equation. When b is equal to 0, that is, this condition means the control volume is stationary. Okay, the control volume is stationary. So what does it mean? So it means d dt of integral rho dv over v star is equal to integral rho. Now let us write down the entire formula, but here b is now 0, so this becomes something like this, and in fact I can take the negative sign outside and simplify it to minus u dot n dA. What is the physical meaning of this statement? So if I choose this control volume, this is v star, and it has no velocity, and let us say the velocity of the fluid is something like this. Okay, now I have just shown the velocity on the left face and the right face, but you can easily imagine what will happen if the velocity is there on the other faces. So on the left hand side, we have rate of increase of mass of the system, and this need not be 0 because this is not a control mass. I can have a bottle of water, okay, and I keep on adding water, so the mass inside keeps on increasing because this bottle is not the control mass. Okay, so the rate of increase of mass of the system is equal to, what is u dot n cap dA? So if I have, so if I have this volume, and if this is the area at this particular point, then the area vector is this, and if the velocity vector is this, then u dot n cap represents the outflux, and in fact u dot n cap dA is the rate of loss of volume. U dot n cap dA is rate of loss of volume from the control volume. Now, rate of increase of mass of the system has to be how much mass you are putting into the system, and thus this negative sign comes into picture. So if u dot n cap dA is the rate of loss of volume, minus u dot n cap dA is the rate of influx. So minus rho u n dA is the, so if when I multiply by rho, this volume becomes mass. So this is total influx of mass through the surface. So if I have influx into the surface, the mass of the system will increase. Okay. So if I consider this system, the rate of change of mass, so on the left face, the normal vector is in this direction, and the velocity vector is in this direction. So on the left face, what is u dot n cap? It will be negative. Let us write it down. On the left face, u dot n cap, because u is pointing in this direction and n cap is pointing in the other direction, okay, it will be essentially mod u mod n times cos theta, and theta is more than 90 degree because it's opposite. Okay, so this entire term will be negative. So we have a negative term, let us call it minus b. I am calling it minus b because b we can choose to be a positive term, and this negative reminds us that it's a negative term. So on the left hand side, this particular term will be equal to minus of integral rho times minus b over dA, and this becomes rho b a. So if we imagine that the velocity almost becomes parallel to the normal vector, then this will simply become rho b a. Otherwise, you have to do the integration. It will be some factor times this. But the important thing is, on the left face, we have a positive term because rho is positive, b was chosen to be positive, and a is also positive. So if we do not have these terms, if velocity is only going into the control volume, then the mass increases. Alright, if we have these terms existing, so the normal vector is something like this. So over at this face, u dot n is definitely positive because u direction and n direction are sort of aligned. They are less than, the cos theta will be positive number because theta is less than 90 degree. So this term will be positive, right? Let us call it a. So then when you put the values over here, you will get integral rho a dA, and this will be equal to rho a if the velocity and the normal vector are perfectly aligned. So this means the negative sign when taken into account will lead to this. So if we have only this term existing and this term not existing, it will be d dt of integral rho dv is equal to minus rho a. So this is a negative term, meaning the mass inside the system is reducing in time. There is no rate of increase because of the negative sign. It is decreasing over time. You can take some time to do some analysis. So suppose you have a tank. So what happens in your home? So you have a tank, and there is supply from the municipal line into the tank. Okay, it starts to fill. So there is one outlet also which goes into your taps. So this is closed. So when there is influx, okay, at the point of influx, what is happening? The normal vector to this control volume, if I draw this as the control volume, the normal vector is like this and the incoming water is like this. So u dot n cap is negative. So here there is influx. So if there is influx, we know that the mass inside the system will increase, and it does increase. Once this is closed, once this is open, it reduces. So the mass inside will keep on reducing because here there is outflux. Okay, any doubt in this so far?
Sir,
Yeah.
can you explain me the generic? Why did we take generic volume? Because I'm not clear with that concept of generic volume.
So suppose you want, you can mute yourself. Suppose you don't want to have a generic volume. So this is like the generic volume. This is like the generic control volume which is stationary. If I wanted to write the conservation of mass for the fluid, I would have to track a fluid like this. This is the identified fluid. Now this identified fluid moves with the velocity. So next time instant it is over here, then over here. So I have to continuously track this entire volume. Or if I want to write down, so suppose this tank is full, suppose the tank is full, then I have to sort of track this entire tank of water for conserving the mass. Okay. So as it starts moving, I have to track this weirdly shaped volume. You understand? Because if I am tracking a control mass, I have to now track this weirdly shaped volume as it is going through the fluid. So then I will have to make the volume deform in the way that the fluid will make it. After a next time instant, it will become something like this. So it is not always convenient to track the entire volume of the fluid. I mean, I'll show you in what follows how sometimes it can also be beneficial. Okay. So you want to keep your options open. You want to make generic control volumes so that you can make the best out of the problem. You can strategize how to choose various kinds of control masses, control volumes rather, to make your life easy. Anyone else? Okay. So let's continue. Let us now move to the differential formulation of the conservation of mass. So we know that if we have a control volume which moves with the velocity of the fluid, then we can, so this control mass is moving with the velocity of the fluid. At all points it has the velocity of the fluid. So we can now write integral del rho del t dv plus integral rho u dot n dA is equal to 0. Now let us convert this area integral into a volume integral. So then we can make use of the divergence theorem to write integral del rho del t dv plus, now the divergence theorem tells us, so any quantity dot n cap dA, if I have any quantity phi dA, rather let's keep it vector. So this will then be, so over the area, this will be equal to divergence of phi over the entire volume. Okay. So with this in mind, this will be divergence of rho u dA. This will be equal to 0. So this is over the volume as well. This won't be V star. It will be V. So now I can combine the two integrals and I can write integral del rho del t plus divergence of rho u, this entire thing times this should have been dv, my bad, and consequently this will also be dv. Now if this conservation statement has to hold true for any control volume, any arbitrary control volume, then the integrand has to be 0. Now you may argue that I can have this term varying in such a way. So suppose I have a 2D problem, I can have it vary like this so that the integral over this length segment is 0. But that is like a special case. You want this integrand to be 0 for any arbitrary control volume, not for any special choice of control volume. I want it to be true over this control volume also. If it is supposed to be true over any arbitrary control volume, then del del t plus nabla dot rho u, this entire integrand has to be 0. And this is the differential form of the conservation of mass. Now, the differential form is something like this. Let us let us simplify this. So, the divergence of rho u can be written as, so let us write it in index notation, it will be a good practice. So this will be del del xi of rho ui, where the Einstein summation notation is understood because I is a repeated index. Now if this is true, I can write it down as ui del rho del xi plus rho del ui del xi, and this is nothing but u dot nabla rho. So this is the first term, and the second term is rho. So what is del ui del xi? It is simply equal to the divergence of the velocity because we have the Einstein summation index notation over here. So we get divergence of rho u is equal to u dot nabla operating on rho plus rho times divergence of the velocity. Just to be clear, u dot nabla is not nabla dot u. This is an operator, while this is a scalar. And u dot nabla, if you recall the total derivative stuff that we have done in the previous lecture, this is equal to u del del x plus v del del y plus w del del z. And when this operates on a scalar, say phi, this will be phi, phi, phi. And in general, this can be written as u1 del del x1. So this operator can be written as u1 del del x1 plus u2 del del x2 plus u3 del del x3. So this is how the operator can be written. So this is just to refresh your memory. So now we can simplify the conservation of mass, the differential statement, as this plus. So now this term becomes the summation of this two. So u dot nabla rho plus rho nabla dot u equal to 0. So now if we look at what the total derivative of the rho of the density will be, it will be del rho del t plus u dot nabla of rho. So this is by definition the total derivative. In some textbooks you will see instead of capital D, small d written, but we know really that capital D and small d are the same. Capital D we are writing to tell the reader that it's a material Lagrangian derivative, it's a material derivative. Essentially it's a Lagrangian derivative, and the relationship between a Lagrangian and an Eulerian derivative is this. I can very well write it as D, but it's just to tell that okay, we are working in an Eulerian frame and this Lagrangian derivative is related to the Eulerian derivative like this. In certain books you may find this, but don't worry. So now we have what? If this is true, then we have del t plus rho nabla dot u. So I've combined these two terms, and I have, oh, sorry, we don't need to combine those terms. In fact, it is simply this particular combination. This particular combination. So it simply becomes d rho dt plus rho nabla dot u equal to 0. Or more generally, 1 upon rho d rho dt plus the divergence of velocity is equal to 0. Now let us take some cases of this. So we have just obtained 1 upon rho d rho dt plus the divergence of velocity equal to 0. So the first special case, that is constant density. If the density is constant, we have this entire term vanishing, and we simply have divergence of velocity equal to 0. So the statement of the conservation of mass for a differential fluid element is that the divergence of the velocity must be 0, and the divergence of a volume is simply how much flux is coming in, that much flux has to go out. This particular statement's physical meaning is whatever flux is coming in has to go out. So if I want to write this, whatever I just said, whatever flux is coming in has to also go out. So u dot n cap dA integrated over a total area has to be equal to 0. So this should be A, not A star. So I can simply write this as nabla dot u dV. So this is the meaning of this. Whatever flux comes in has to go out. Now this condition is called as the incompressibility condition. Because you may recall that the rate of change of a differential volume with time was found out to be the divergence of the velocity. This we have studied in the very beginning of kinematics when we studied linear elongation of a fluid element. So if the rate of change of a fluid, if the rate of change of this is equal to divergence, it means that the volume is incompressible. The volume can distort, but the volume content, that is the total volume of this fluid element, will remain conserved. So this is what is an incompressible element. And we have seen for a constant density flow, it reduces to the same condition, and hence this kind of flows are called as incompressible flows. Now, incompressible flow is different from an incompressible fluid. Incompressible flow is something in which the flow, whatever it brings mass into the volume, is also taking it out of the volume. But an incompressible fluid is a fluid whose density does not change with pressure. Meaning, you can take a piston, you can put some fluid, and you put a lot of weight on this piston. So, if the density does not change, then this fluid is called as an incompressible fluid, which is not at all to be confused with an incompressible flow. An incompressible flow is a kinematic property, whereas an incompressible fluid is a physical property. And typically, all various kinds of fluids that we see are incompressible fluids, but they may not be incompressible flows. Okay, okay. Let us have a case where we have incompressibility as one of the condition. But does incompressibility imply density equal to constant? So if, so first let us write down the statement. I might have forgotten to write 1 upon rho. No. So if the flow is given to be incompressible, that is the divergence of velocity is 0, it is incompressible flow. So if the flow is said to be incompressible, then is density constant? So if this is 0, then we can write at best 1 upon rho d rho dt equal to 0. And this actually means 1 upon rho del t plus u dot nabla of rho over rho equal to 0. Now we can have a variation of rho over time and space such that the combination of these two terms at a given point in the flow is equal to 0. The combination of these two terms at a given point, or not a given point, at all points in the flow domain, if they are 0, then this is called as variable density incompressible flow. Because regardless of what the density is behaving like, regardless of how the velocity field is, I must always conserve volume. That is a given statement. Okay. However, the volume may deform. If this is a material volume, I must have the same amount of mass inside this control mass. So I must, if this control mass shrinks to a point, this is the differential statement. This differential statement must be true if the flow is incompressible. This differential element must always hold true. And if density is constant, then we simply reduce everything to the divergence of velocity equal to 0. Another important aspect of incompressibility is if the flow is incompressible, then we can represent this particular velocity vector as a curl of a vector. So u can be represented as the curl of another vector because the divergence of a curl is equal to 0. So I can write velocity in this form. Moreover, I can use what is called as the Helmholtz decomposition theorem to write this particular arbitrary vector as a combination of chi grad psi plus the curl of another vector. This is called as the Helmholtz decomposition theorem. But now because u is already curl of this, I can drop the curl term. I can drop this particular term and I can simply write chi as chi in terms of two scalars. So the first scalar is chi and the second scalar is grad of psi. Rather, the second scalar is psi and the vector is gradient of psi. So this is like a multiplier to the vector field gradient of psi. So now if this is true, what is the expression for u in terms of chi and psi? It will be the curl of chi grad psi. Now what is, so anyone who has done a bit of vector calculus can directly write the result of this particular operation. But supposing you do not know what the direct result is, you want to derive this. So let us make use of the information we know from the index notation, alternating tensor and all that. So the curl, so ui, the ith component of u can be written as epsilon ijk del xj, the kth component of chi grad psi. And the kth component of chi grad psi is going to be chi del psi del xk, and this may be simplified as epsilon ijk del chi del xj del psi del xk plus epsilon ijk chi del 2 psi del xj del xk. I can simplify it as this, and epsilon ijk del chi del xj del psi del xk is equal to the gradient of chi cross the gradient of psi. This epsilon ijk del chi del xj del psi del xk is equal to this. What about the second term? This is, so let us write this down. Epsilon ijk del 2 psi del xj del xk times chi. Now I can substitute j and k in del 2 psi del xj del xk without any issue because psi can be assumed to be a smooth, continuous, differentiable and all that kind of function. So I can replace the order of derivative. But swapping j and k means creating a cyclic to anticyclic change in epsilon. Hence, the moment I change j and k, there will be another negative term of this same derivative, because the derivative remain constant but the sign becomes negative. So this entire term will vanish. If I take all the different sums, this entire term will vanish. Moreover, j cannot be equal to k, because epsilon ijk, if I repeat j or k, it will be equal to 0. Hence this term vanishes and this term simply becomes, so u vector from all this discussion. So this should be actually the ith component of this, because we still have a free index I, j repeated, k repeated. So this should be still I. So ui is equal to this. So I can write the u vector as uh, grad chi times grad psi, not times but cross. So now this means that u is in a plane that is orthogonal to the grad chi direction and the grad psi direction. Let me take a two-dimensional flow. So this is a two-dimensional plane where there is some flow field. So let us say that the flow field is something like this. Okay. So I know that the velocity field is orthogonal to grad chi lines and grad psi lines. And the orthogonality is because of the cross product. So if u at this point is in this direction, this is u, grad chi must be in this direction and grad psi must be in this direction. And if grad chi has to be in this direction, I know that all the velocity fields are sort of orthogonal to grad chi. Okay, everywhere grad chi will be like this. So for two-dimensional flows, I can choose chi to be equal to z, so that grad chi is always equal to Ez. That is this particular direction. So this becomes Ez. Now the velocity field is like this. So grad chi, so chi, not chi, the grad psi lines. So grad psi must be like this, meaning the psi lines must be like something like this. Okay. So this is the direction of grad psi. So at this particular point, this is grad psi. This is the direction of grad chi, and the velocity will be something like this. Okay. So psi is called as the stream function, and the stream function has nothing to do with streamline. Okay. But now let us evaluate. Let us evaluate very quickly what the velocity in 2D will be. So grad chi already found out to be Ez. So now Ez cross grad psi. Let us quickly find this out. Let us do the whole classical cross product thing because it's easier to visualize. So I, j, k. So Ez will be 0, 0, 1. Grad psi will be del psi del x, del psi del y, 0, because psi is planar. So what is the I component? It will be minus del psi del y. What will be the j component? It will be del psi del x, and there will be no k component. So I can effectively write the u velocity as minus del psi del y and the v velocity as this should be x, as del psi del x. So I can represent the velocity in a plane. If it is divergence free, I can express this divergence free velocity in a two-dimensional plane in terms of a single scalar. I don't need to write two components of velocity. I can represent the entire information of the velocity only in terms of a single scalar psi, which is the stream function. You can easily verify that this velocity field described in terms of the stream function gives a zero divergence, because the divergence is del u del x plus del v del y, and this is equal to del x of, so what is u? It is minus del psi del y. What is v? It is del psi del x. So this is plus del y of v, which is del psi del x. So this is del 2 psi del x del y plus del 2 psi del y del x, and the cross derivatives are equal, and this becomes equal to 0. So we are convinced that for an incompressible flow, I can write down for a two-dimensional flow the velocity field something like this. Now something to pick your brain. We know that axisymmetric flows are flows which happen in the RZ direction. There is no component of velocity in the theta direction. So this is an axisymmetric problem. So if I look at an isometric view of this, there is no velocity in this direction. All the velocities are like this. Okay. So can you arrive at an expression for the stream function, or rather the UR and UZ component of velocity in terms of a stream function for an axisymmetric flow? Before you go ahead and derive that, I would like to tell you that if the flow is always confined to the RZ plane, it means that phi is like the angle phi. If I am calling this angle as phi, so there is no flow in the phi direction. Okay, in the previous case, there was no flow in the z direction. Similarly, there is no flow in the psi direction. Iso-psi planes look something like this. So this is one iso-psi plane. This is going to be another iso-psi plane. Okay, so iso-psi planes, if I look at the top view of this is one psi, this is another psi. So these are all iso-psi. So this will be the grad iso-psi direction. Okay, this is the grad psi direction. So grad psi direction at this point will be into the plane. Okay, so I'm just giving you this much of a hint. Now rest you have to find out. Okay, the flow is not in the iso-psi direction, meaning the chi will be equal to phi. Rest you have to figure out. Okay guys, any doubt? It's been a nice elaborate session in my opinion.